a lot of people really enjoyed the TV series 13 Reasons Why. They felt like it shed a lot of light on how many times young people struggle with some pretty serious issues. But the thing is, there's a missing conversation that needs to happen in light of that show being so wildly popular. And that conversation is about mental health. One of the things that the show really didn't highlight is the struggle and what it's like to be battling with dark thoughts inside of your own heart and your own soul. Now, I know that we could argue like, yes, we heard some of that on the tapes and, they tried to show that. Okay, cool, like yes or no, not really my debate. But what I do know is what it's like to struggle inside of your head and heart. You see, mental illness can leave you in a really foggy state. When you're battling with suicidal thoughts, when you're battling with depression, when you have anxiety, when you have regular panic attacks, these things are very real to a lot of people and to a lot of young people. When those things are going on, there's 3 things that I want all of us to recognize. Number 1, it's very hard to think clearly. One of the glaring holes for me in 13 Reasons Why was how at the end of the series, Hannah was able to kind of sit down in one night and just map out all of the reasons why she had been hurt. Now, I get how that moved the story along and how we were in a dramatized TV series, and so, for time's sake or whatever, I get why they did it to move the story forward. But it is incredibly unrealistic. Because when you are hurting and in a lot of pain, and when you're in a dark spot, which is what I think they were trying to portray Hannah Baker as being in, your thoughts are actually pretty unclear. It's hard to string together what's going on, why you feel the way that you do, and what to do with it, where it came from, if you were right to feel that way, if you're wrong to feel that way. Like, it's incredibly difficult to think clearly. And some of that was missing from 13 Reasons Why. Number 2, we hear things wrong when we struggle with mental illness. So they kind of emphasize that a little bit in the show. Like, we saw oftentimes Clay was listening to things on the tape, and then he'd be seeing interactions, and he thought that someone was yelling at him. He thought that they were saying things that they weren't. That's a somewhat accurate representation of how we can hear things wrong. Third, the lens through which you see the world is a little bit darker. When you struggle with mental health, you don't necessarily see clearly, you don't necessarily hear clearly, you don't necessarily think clearly. If those 3 things are missing, it's hard to make sense of the world, and it's hard to know how to move forward, which is why you often need someone in your life who has skill and training to move you through what happened, what is happening, and where you can go. Finding wholeness is difficult, especially if you can't quite perceive and see clearly. That was missing from the show. And I know there are people who genuinely struggle with mental illness who felt like the show trivialized them because that aspect was not seen. And I just want to bring that to the light and say, I get it. And I mean, I guess we could say it was Hollywood or it was for time's sake or whatever. But the thing is, those who are struggling, it's not wrapped, our lives are not wrapped in a 13-hour episode. Like, it's a longer battle. It's a longer journey, and I want to validate that inside of you guys. I know and recognize that it's longer than just a 1-hour episode. Your fight and your battle takes time because you're trying to process out, did I think that right? Did I not think that right? Did I hear this right? Did I see that right? And it takes time to go through that process. Here's to you who are figuring it out. Here's to you guys who are working through the mess of life. Here's to you who are going out there and courageously attacking the day to work through any depression, any anxiety, any panic attacks, any dark thoughts. here's to you guys that are fighting that battle every single day. I believe you guys can keep going. I am calling you to keep going. I see you, and I'm proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing.